What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Ryan Reynolds film, Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 is directed by David Leitch, stars Ryan Reynolds, Josh Brolin, Zazie Beetz, Julian Dennison, and TJ Miller. Deadpool 2 picks up where the first left off, except for now Deadpool is an international assassin, so now there are people wanting him dead because of who he is killing. But due to unforeseen events, Cable comes to Deadpool's time from the future because he is there to kill a young mutant child who has apparently done something in the future that is so bad that Cable needs to kill him so that thing can never happen. Deadpool, having mixed feelings about the fact that Cable wants to kill this kid, builds a team known as the X-Force to try and stop Cable and save this kid. Now, the big thing about this movie is I think that it genuinely improves upon everything from Deadpool 1. I don't think there's anything that is worse than the first one in this film, which is high praise for a sequel because it's very hard for sequels to normally do that. But I think the key here is that Deadpool 1 for me was also a good movie, but it was somewhat overrated. I think because it was so different from what we had ever seen that I feel that everyone was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's so different that it's also amazing. Where it's like, yeah, it was definitely funny and it was good, but it wasn't a mind-blowingly like crazy good film, which is something that is very important to objectively view when you watch a film. And I feel like this one improved upon the issues the first one had to make a superior movie. Ryan Reynolds, of course, returns as the Merc with a Mouth, Deadpool, Wade Wilson, and this is basically the role that I feel like Ryan Reynolds was born to play. He's absolutely superb in the movie. Every single scene that he has is fantastic. He's perfect with the comedy, but this one actually has quite a bit of emotional sequences for him to deal with, and I felt like Reynolds handled those very well. I know with the first one it was sort of a joke, but Ryan Reynolds actually ended up getting votes from the Academy to possibly be nominated for Best Actor when Deadpool 1 came out, and I genuinely could see that happening again. I feel like the amount that Reynolds immerses himself into this role as Deadpool is just so impressive that I feel like it's hard to sort of just try to look past it and be like, it's just a superhero movie, because the performance is really good. It's up there with, you know, those really good ones. The main difference I'd say is that this film is very comedic compared to the more serious superhero roles that have been considered in the past, but he's still a really great performance. All of the new cast members and the X-Force and everything all do a great job. They all have their own little moments to shine here and there, and I really enjoyed seeing them all in the movie. Domino specifically I thought was a ton of fun. I think her power is very interesting, that it's just luck because it lends itself to having really cool, extremely cinematic experiences in the film, but that's also a joke that Deadpool makes because he's like, it doesn't sound like a very cinematic superpower, but that's exactly what it is in the movie. And I think that Zazie Beetz did a really good job in the role. She was funny, she had some very emotional sequences at times, and her character was fairly lighthearted because she knew that she would be okay no matter what, because the fact that Lady Luck was always on her side. I'm a massive Josh Brolin fan, so getting to see Josh Brolin as Thanos 2 weeks ago in Infinity War and do a phenomenal job, and then getting to see him be in Deadpool 2 as Cable and do an amazing job is just so much fun. I think Josh Brolin is so talented, and it was so awesome to get to see him in this movie because I think he really was perfect for this role. Because Cable isn't very funny. He's one of the few characters in these films, in this like sort of, he's one of the only serious characters in the Deadpool universe that has no like comedy to him. He's very straightforward, there's no jokes, there's nothing. He's very deadpan and extremely serious in all the scenes, and I feel like Brolin handled that perfectly, and the way he interacted with Deadpool made for some of the most funny sequences in the whole film. Julian Dennison plays the kid that Cable is hunting down in the film, and he's a young New Zealander actor who has sort of blown up recently. He did one of Taika Waititi's films a couple years ago and blew up in fame, and people everywhere gave critical acclaim to that film. It's partially what led to Waititi getting Thor Ragnarok, and I think it's also part of the reason that he maybe got to be in this film. He does a phenomenal job. He's so funny, but his character 100% has some very emotional, dark sequences in this film, and I thought that for the age of this actor, he handled it extremely well and did a great job. The film clocks in at a pretty lean hour and 50 minutes, which is very different from the normal Marvel 2.5 hours that I think we've all gotten used to, but because of that, the pacing is really good throughout the film. Every single scene serves its purpose and rarely overstays its welcome, because every single scene has to get something done so we can move forward in the story. It's either funny, it's emotional, or it's got action. It's one of those three because it's pushing the story forward. And along with the action, this movie took great strides, in my opinion, to improve the action from the first, because to me, the first one relied very heavily on the fact that it was like kind of funny in the action. This one improved upon the direction in the action sequences, choreography, everything in it was sort of taken to the next level in the action, and I really appreciated that because I think it was necessary. Deadpool is a very violent character, so action plays a big role in sort of his storytelling, and I think that they mastered that more in this film than the first, and I have to give them props for that. However, I do have a couple problems with the film. The first one being that I feel with the hour and 50-minute time that it has and the amount of new characters that they introduce in this film, we don't really get a lot of backstory from any of them. And while the characters that were in Deadpool 1 are fine, they don't need a ton more, they get more throughout this film. But a lot of the newer characters, while I was invested in them being in the film and like their powers, I didn't really care what happened to them. I wasn't like, oh no, I'm so worried for this character, because I never got invested in who they were, what they'd been through, their life, or anything like that. I knew very little about them, and I feel that in the film they should have maybe put a few more scenes in there, sort of giving us some more backstory on these characters so we could feel for them and care about them in later sequences. And in the bigger issue that I have with the film, it's an issue that I had with the first Deadpool as well, and I feel like it's something that's just going to kind of plague these movies for me personally, because I know very few people agree with me on this, but this movie is hilarious. It is objectively an extremely funny movie. It has a ton of comedy, a ton of great jokes, and I was laughing a lot in the theater. But the reason that there are so many laughs and there's so much like fun humor throughout the film is because they just cram it full of as many jokes as possible. And to me, comedic efficiency is important in a film. This movie relies very heavily on just cramming as many jokes as it can into as many scenes as possible. And while I'd say about 75% of those jokes hit, the other 25% don't. And when they don't hit, it just kind of feels like you're just throwing in as many jokes as you can to try to get as many laughs out of the audience. And there's nothing wrong with trying to give people an enjoyable film watching experience, but to me, I would rather have 100% of the jokes, or at least like 90% of the jokes, be really funny and have 10% kind of miss their mark, and have less jokes than have the film be as crammed with jokes as both Deadpool movies are, and only really find, 3/4 of them funny, which is still a pretty good ratio. I'm not saying that's a bad ratio by any means, but I just think that that's an issue because I would rather have higher quality, funnier jokes consistently than have it be like, I laugh, I don't laugh, I laugh, I don't laugh, I laugh, I laugh, I laugh, and then I don't laugh at 3 jokes in a row. And there are definitely scenes in this movie that are amazing. There's one scene in this film that is absolutely hilarious, but there are also a ton of other smaller jokes in the film that to me entirely missed their mark. And in the theater I was in, it seemed like I wasn't the only person that felt they missed their mark, because there were quite a few jokes that people just didn't laugh at. I'm gonna give Deadpool 2 an A-. This movie's a ton of fun. It's got great jokes, it's got great action, it's got a really solid story that to me is far superior from the first in terms of the emotional aspects and giving characters more to do in their performances, but it did have a couple problems for me, and they weren't huge problems. So if you're a fan of Deadpool 1, or if you haven't even seen Deadpool 1 and you're just a fan of superhero films or want to try something different, definitely go watch this one. It's got a ton of great Easter eggs, a ton of super funny jokes, and I really think that you'll have a great time with it. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Deadpool 2, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and hope to see you guys later.